I want to fulfill that commitment. So,
Should be good.
thank you, Ramona. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Environment Sustainability Committee meeting, Wednesday, November the 17th, the year 2021. First item, order of business called to order. Item 2, declarations of conflict of interest.
No.
Okay. Approval of agenda. Approval of agenda.
Good, sir.
Yeah.
Vote second, thank you. Approval of minutes.
Good.
Okay. Business arising from the minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I thought I brought up at the last meeting the concern that came from the active transportation task force to attach in signage or an indicator to wear your helmet, to attach them to a sign that's already up that says bicycle lane only, bicycle lane ends. Is that in here, or I'm missing
We
it?
did have a recommendation come from the task force a few meetings ago to have staff, and this committee requested that staff look into feasibility of that, of the
Okay.
signage. So we don't have any update at this time. If we were going to do that, it would be included in the budget for next year.
For the signage?
Yeah, for the signage.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Everything okay?
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, I'd just like to mention that Tina Lococo, our deputy CAO, is on the line as well.
Good morning, Tina. Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. I guess next, Mona, is our reports and discussions. We will now move to item A, 2022-2023 draft capital budget. And Ramona, please.
Great, so as the committee can see, I've included our draft capital budget. This committee doesn't have a very large capital budget, but more so on the transit side, but there are a few items in there to note. So we will have a full carryover of the bypass highway AT path that will be carried over into the next budget year. That has been tendered and awarded, but we were able to receive significantly reduced pricing by shifting to a spring construction versus trying to push it out this fall. So we're looking to carry over the full amount of that, including the 50% funding from the PEI Active Transportation Fund would also be carried over. Additionally, we've got a carryover of some of our water bottle refill stations funds. We're going to work to try to use those up as best we can within this fiscal year, but whatever we don't get completed, we would like to move that forward into the next fiscal. So that is where we're looking at city facilities and putting water refill stations in as many facilities as we can. We do have a little bit of a bottleneck in that we're city staff are doing the install, so it's not the purchase of the refills, it is getting the other lining up installation. It takes a little bit more time. So we are working away at that, and some have been completed, but there's a few more to go. And then in terms of like new initiatives, we had submitted an application on the solar wave charging station. You may remember that was presented to committee a number of months ago. It has been submitted to NRCan for funding, so it's $150,000 the project and $75,000 will be coming from NRCan. If that project was approved, we'd be looking to proceed with that in this year. We have a new project called Placemaking Project for Teens. We need some additional bike lockers and bike racks for our bike rack cost sharing program, as well as bike lockers were one of the elements that were recommended by the AT task force, so we can look into that. And I'm also suggesting that with a renewed interest in electric bikes, that we add the purchase of 4 e-bikes for city operations into our budget as well. The province is going to shortly announce an incentive program for e-bikes, so we put in approximately $2,000 coming from the province on that. So that's a quick overview, but happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I think I'll start, Ramona. You talked about the continuation of the bypass highway phase 2. Okay, where does that take us?
Phase 2 takes us from the roundabout at St. Peter's Road down Norwood Road, along the bypass highway by the airport property to Brackley Point Road. So essentially it takes you from St. Peter's Road to Brackley Point Road on the bypass highway.
Okay.
And then there's also an extension that goes up Brackley Point Road to connect to the existing AT path that currently stops at Maple Hills Avenue.
Yeah.
So it goes about 1 kilometer up Brackley Point Road as well. And that was a connection that we noted for some time it was missing.
Goes up Brackley Point Road to where?
To Maple Hills Avenue, that's like the sort of the back entrance to the airport. There's an AT path that starts there.
Yeah, and goes out Brackley.
And goes
Point
out
and
past
stops
Brackley
in the middle of nowhere.
Commons. But it does allow sort of connectivity with that piece and residents living out in that area to enter into Charlottetown.
That's on the
East side.
west side or east side?
East.
On the side
It's
of
on
the airport?
side, yeah.
It's on the airport side. Okay. Is there any other projects that were considered?
Not, most of our projects are, like, I know Hamad and I had talked about a number of energy projects, but those will end up in the public works budget. So this is sort of the projects that we would normally include in a capital budget
Would we include other capital projects for active transportation?
My understanding from the discussions we've had at this committee and other committees that active transportation, building active transportation infrastructure will continue to be operated by Public Works. We're just completing a project that was initiated by this committee, which is phase 1, 2, and 3 of the bypass highway project.
Well, I appreciate that, Ramona, but I wondered, can this committee also pursue other capital projects besides the continuation of phase 2 of the bypass, which brings us up into Sherwood? There's other projects as well that I think should be explored.
Under capital.
Absolutely. Because,
You have one in mind?
yeah, Towers Road. Towers Road is an excellent example.
Does that fit the parameters of capital projects for sustainability?
It does fit the parameters of capital projects, but my understanding is that we're looking to solidify what are all the active transportation priorities that we have as an organization, and to have those coming out of the Public Works budget, unless they come out of the Parks budget, which is where the trails come out of. So the terms of reference of this committee and of the Parks and Rec committee
In Public Works.
and Public Works, that's what they would suggest. I think we would require a change if we were going to be doing independently active transportation projects going forward.
Well, and I think, if I could,
Sure.
this committee would be promoting the connection phase 4, promoting that. There would be discussion with Public Works. We're not going to get it through council right now, the way it is.
What's that?
To put it extra active transportation through environment. They're going to come back to second. That active transportation falls under Public Works, correct? So we can recommend all we want, Chair, but I know we're not going to get that piece through. But again, are you guys involved as a management team working with Public Works team to look at the bigger picture here? Is that happening?
Yes, so there's the PEI Active Transportation Fund deadline is coming up on December 3rd. So we do have a meeting with the 3 department heads, myself, Scott Adams, and Frank Quinn next week to talk about projects that we would like to submit to that. But in terms of a larger discussion of council on what active transportation projects get looked at in the capital budget this year, that would need to be something that's coordinated through council.
Great.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry for being late. Mona, so is it staff that's going to be presenting something to council with regards to the active transportation trail? I mean, I know in, for instance, West Royalty, we have the new one the province put in with government, but again, it leads to nowhere.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, how do you connect that to what's already existing out there, in order to be able to get across the road and things like that? I know the province is a big part of that, but there's pieces to the puzzle, because once you cross the road, then of course you have that's either one of the trails that doesn't have a sidewalk. And
Yeah.
so I'm just curious, does staff present something to us after looking at the active transportation trails for Charlottetown as a whole and say, here's where we suggest the connector should be? Or
My understanding is that Public Works did a review of active, missing active transportation pieces, like sidewalks, bike lanes, and presented that to council. Did they not? Like in terms of the entire, this was like what it would cost to do the entire city and finish all the sidewalks and AT paths.
I don't remember seeing it, Ramona.
Okay.
I do know that Public Works shifted some money around to do other projects. Again, because they've had a request by councilors and they've gone ahead and done it, and they've done the surveying and everything.
Yeah.
I'd like to see something a little more holistic, something greater for Charlottetown to say that, instead of, a councilor or councilors lobbying for, and it's not about you, Councilor Twill, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying any councilor lobbying, because I haven't lobbied
Yeah.
for anything, thinking that we're just going to continue to grow Charlottetown and connect it properly. I don't feel the need to have to do that, hoping that staff are going to make recommendations saying, here's where it makes sense to start connecting the pieces together, because you have the expertise versus me, myself.
Yeah. No, I agree that a collaborative effort and a master plan, a lot of the things, like for instance, our regional active transportation plan we did in 2012, a lot of pieces of that plan are complete now. I don't know if we could certainly go as comprehensive as updating that whole plan, or we could kind of look to do something a little less formal. I think a lot of the pieces and connectors are already identified. It's just prioritizing those that's kind of the missing piece. I can have a follow-up conversation with Public Works. I just don't know necessarily if this is where that recommendation is going to come to, but certainly operationally, will participate in that.
It would be
and
great to
help
get at
drive
the
that.
silos, if you will.
Yeah.
We keep talking about it. So it'd be great if we had the opportunity to see, the recommendation from Public Works / Environment, kind of a unified approach coming forward to different committees or all council to say, here's what's being proposed, here's the connectors that need to take place. That makes sense. I mean, we're always going to find ourselves behind because the city continues to grow in pockets.
Yeah.
And, if we put all our energy in one place, then we're going to be missing out in certain places. I just think that it would be good that it comes from the professionals, which the city has, which in you folks.
Yeah.
I'd like to see something as opposed to.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we've talked about this before. We've talked about it at other committees, breaking down these silos, and I think Ramona has been talking about let's collaborate more. But if you look at what's happening in Cornwall, Stratford, all these active transportation pathways are coming into the city. We're going into these communities. And as Councillor Rivard mentioned, I don't know if you've seen the new Upton Road active transportation pathway, but that's the pathway that Sean Murphy would like to go with an underpass over Capitol Drive, connect to Beach Grove Road, but going north, it would connect somewhere to, the Confederation Trail. So again, just like we had at the last meeting, talking about this green belt, we're looking also at connecting all these dots when it comes to our active transportation pathway. And we can be working with our other two communities, Stratford, Cornwall, and Charlottetown, in a more, as I agree with Councillor Byrd, a comprehensive master plan for active transportation pathways. Thank you. Do they, Ramona?
We have the 2012 Regional Active Transportation Plan, which was done in collaboration with Stratford, Cornwall, and the province.
And you completed a lot of that, as you said
A
earlier.
lot of it has been completed. There's still some things that could be done, but I think it could use an update for sure. We're coming up on 10 years next year.
So they have a committee formed, are they not, is that not already up there?
My understanding is there was a committee formed for a few years after the 2012 plan came out, but that it has since stopped meeting. So, I mean, I've been to some ad hoc
There's none of our
meetings.
staff on it from our department.
Right.
That's it on the committee.
Right.
And like they would have sat on the bridge, not bike pathway,
Yeah.
what's happened out in CP Road. So I can only assume that active active transportation pathway plan from 2012 has been updated. Like,
Has it?
Not to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean like, I know Scott Adams, our manager of public works, has
He
sat
goes-
in on some of
Yes,
those
that's right,
meetings,
yeah.
but I don't know if it's tied to the regional active transportation plan as much as it is, here's some projects we're tackling,
Okay.
let's work on them.
And Councilor Bernard, all it is just a master plan, a revision of 2012. Like
Yeah,
we-
yeah, no,
we-
I agree with that.
Yeah, and we have some great pathways, and people are using them. I don't know if you've been across the Hillsborough Bridge, but we have our business over there. The amount of traffic, walking, cycling, rollerblading, you name it, it's increased exponentially.
Yeah, and again, I think, you know, you look over at Stratford and you look at what they did on the Kinloch Road. You know, development continues to expand outside of Stratford a little bit, so they got ahead of the curve basically and put the infrastructure in place for safety. Where, you know, Councilor Keel has talked about towers, you know, we see the development starting heavy on towers. You know, West Royalty, East Royalty, but it's going through a huge boom, and some of that active transportation stuff is being addressed. You know, West Royalty is going to get another shot here in the arm shortly. It'd be nice to be able to have a master plan to get ahead of the curve to make sure that we
Yeah,
have
I
the
think-
infrastructure in place.
I think safety is a big part of it, and I think that's why you're seeing somewhat of an increase in traffic.
On bikes.
Well, it doesn't matter, I mean, the bridge is now safe, you look
Okay.
at that, people, I know that the tunnel on St. Peter Road, that's John Andrews, but it's increased foot traffic probably 5 times, but used to go around the town and use the trail. Now, I'm sure a lot of people come up to the trail to St. Peter Road from Katie Drive and turn around and go back. Now it's safe to cross St. Peter Road, and they go right through, they go over the pond, so there's other connections that go right up by the ball field.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is my point around even West Royalty. So the Upton, we got the new piece put in Upton Road by the province and feds, which was fantastic. So now it takes you from Royalty Road and, you know, soccer fields, if you will, all the way to this point. But now you can't connect unless you try to play Frogger across 4 lanes of traffic
Right,
to the other side, right?
Right.
So that same idea,
Yeah.
to be able to connect now the 2 pieces, there's that connection point that, you know, you talk about safety. That should be
No, it's big
a
time.
pivotal.
Yeah, I agree.
Just getting back, Mr. Chair, to the capital budget. Mona, in our operating budget, you have the projects, environmental pillar, economic pillar, social pillar, cultural pillar, 242,000.
In the operational
It's
budget,
in your operational,
we're just looking at capital.
No, I
today.
know,
Okay.
but those pillars, do they intersect with some of the
They're-
capital project initiatives, or, like, I'm trying to figure out, these pillars, what are we using for?
So initially, when the ICSP came out in 2010, it was based very strongly around the 4 pillars.
Yes.
When they set up the budgetary accounts for this department,
Yes.
they set them up as environment, social, economic. But as we know with sustainability, a lot of projects span multiple of those areas, so we don't really use those breakdown like
Anymore. Okay,
But
so you just
they're-
use that lump sum of 242?
Exactly.
Like for Amon coming up with
Yeah.
some ideas with e-bikes, or Katrina working with the community fridge. It's all,
Absolutely.
it's, you just pick from the bag.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, and we present a number of what would that 240 would include. We present that to committee, the breakdown of what that. It's urban watershed management, it's urban forestry, it's energy, it's placemaking, it's all sorts of waste management.
And just to clarify, Mr. Chair, just the last issue about the active transportation pathway running parallel to the arterial highway. When we reach Brackley Point Road, Phase 3 will go in next. This is in,
So
is there
right
a
now,
possibility that we can creep up to
yes.
that?
So
third-
again, it's early to share the capital budget in terms of there's still some things sort of up in the air,
Yeah.
but we are working with the province right now to see if they would consider building Phase 3 of the bypass highway project. It's entirely on the province's
Yeah,
right
it should
of way.
cost much.
No, there's no
It won't
mention.
cost that
No.
much, but right now we're using 50/50 cost share on that, where I am trying to work with them to see if they would consider building Phase 3, because it is entirely on provincial right of way, rather than us contributing.
But it's the goal
50%.
to finish it in 2022.
Yes.
Thank
And that
you.
would go to the Mount Edward Edward Road, where the Confederation Trail comes out of Mount
Yeah.
Edward Road. I think it's like 0.87 of a kilometer.
It's
from-
not much.
yeah,
And
So
there's
it's pretty.
and there's not much ditch infill, it's just go along the.
Yeah, it's not, it's not overly challenging, and it's not a multiple landowners or anything like that, like we've dealt with on the other ones.
Great, thanks, sir.
So just one item from the terms of reference. So it does say for our committee to work with relevant city departments and community partners to improve cycling infrastructure awareness and safety in the city. So, you know, if that was the wish of committee, you could pass a
Read that
motion.
again, sorry. I didn't
Okay.
read it all.
So from the terms of reference, it
Yeah.
says to work with relevant city departments and community partners to improve cycling infrastructure, awareness, and safety in the city.
Awareness and
So,
safety in the city.
and infrastructure. So, Councilor Rivard had mentioned like more of a collaborative effort between departments to identify gaps in the cycling infrastructure and bring that forward. I don't think this would mean that we would put cycling infrastructure long-term in this budget, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't contribute to the planning exercise of what projects get identified and prioritized.
But I'm sticking with the term active transportation pathway. So it's not just cycling, it's for walkers, it's for rollerbladers, skateboarders.
And I agree, it's just not how it's written in the terms of reference.
Okay, we'll have to change that. That's something to consider. What's that under? Is that under your,
That's under this committee.
Yeah, I think it's more awareness and safety. Are you saying that this committee, if we can make recommendations for, is that what you're suggesting, we make recommendations for interconnected cycling?
Yes.
Because I take from what you read, is that we work with the other departments to make cycling safer. More
It says
awareness,
to improve cycling infrastructure, awareness, and safety.
Cycling infrastructure, awareness, and safety.
Yeah. It says all three. So I'm just
I read it as
responding
cycling
to,
infrastructure, awareness, and safety. That's what I read.
it's
Meaning that-
infrastructure, comma, awareness, comma, and safety. So all three are included as written in the terms of reference. That's what included. That doesn't mean to work, it doesn't mean to build cycling infrastructure.
no.
It means to work with other
Yeah.
departments and community partners on
For
improving
recommendation.
cycling infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, if we wanted to, if like,
So if
this
we want-
committee wanted to direct staff to work with other departments to come up with a network
Do we not do
improvement
that now,
plan.
Scott? You guys not go over,
We do.
You do that.
what do you want a recommendation, Councilor Tweed? Is that what you're asking for?
Well, you know,
Well, they're doing it now.
I'd like to see, but I'd like to see something. I think council should see something as opposed to, again, Public Works seeing something on their own, and then all of a sudden, all this infrastructure happening, and, I'm not knocking again at the door, looking for a bunch of stuff, because I have to assume the city and the professionals are kind of doing that and making proper recommendations to get things done. So that's kind of what I want to see. I want to see what the big major plan is. I want to be able to say, okay, well, geez, West Royalty area, for instance, the connection under the highway is identified as a priority at some point, but I can say, that's a 2-year away project. Great, super. Residents, we're looking at 2 years.
So what you're asking for is like basically the 5-year plan.
That's,
I'm
And I think Public Works, is that not working? on it?
yes, well, from my understanding is they are working on a priority list for both sidewalks and active transportation
And-
trail
and-
connections.
But I've never seen anything.
No, we haven't seen
No,
it
Right,
yet.
that's,
And we should.
Absolutely.
That should come part of the budget though, right? This should be the 5-year plan, here's where it is.
Yeah.
but nothing
That's what I think
pre-approved.
we're doing.
Again, I don't want to see anything pre-approved in the budget, to sit there and say, well, this was promised, a year ago. I'd like to see before the budget starts, here's the projects that are ahead of us. Here's a priority, like paving, for Public Works to say, first to worst, or most safe to least safe, and then base our budget on that.
But, well, paving is probably not a great idea because the paving is worse the first, that's an operation. We just don't pay the money. So to see what's being done.
I'm using the example of safe,
Yeah.
not first or worst when it comes to safe, so safest to least safest, if you will, and say that we're going to address the,
Yeah.
the areas that get the most foot traffic or cyclists that require immediate attention.
Yeah.
And that's where our money needs to
I
go.
think if we're being honest, what I think what I'm hearing is that everybody would like to see before decisions are made, what's going to get done in their area.
No,
No,
I'm
no,
talking
it's a
holistic.
city plan.
I started off before you got here, Terry. I'm just using examples of West Royalty, that one connector. I'm saying that from a holistic point of view, no matter be it Towers Road, no matter be it anywhere, okay, that we need to see a bigger plan to say that aside from 10 councillors lobbying for something to be done in the area, that we have the professional city staff make a recommendation to council and say, based on the stats that we have, based on everything that we have, the information, here's where the foot traffic is, here's where the connector should happen to make the city the safest spot. And in order, that's what should happen.
And I was assuming that has to happen. That's what you guys are discussing with Public Works, and that input is put in there, and it comes down to, here's what we recommend because these are the safety issues.
And I think we even need to take it further to determine, is this a priority for the city as far as a strategic priority? Are we looking now at active transportation trails and sidewalks being a priority?
That is a priority.
Well, if it's
That's
a
been a
priority,
right from the
But
beginning.
we haven't, it might be for you,
No, but
it might be different for someone
But it's
else.
been coming up all over the council, and I think what Greg is saying, Councillor Bird, is let's get the departments that are working on this initiative, active transportation pathways, come up with a plan that is a revision of the 2012, is it ICIP plan?
No, it's a regional active
Yeah,
transportation.
so that's all we need, that's what I'm at. I'm agreeing with Councillor Bird, and it doesn't mean it's Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 10, it's, as Greg said, Councillor Bird, it's the big plan.
Yeah, and I would think, I would agree with that. I would think that that's what staff is doing. Staff, when they sit down, don't say, oh, we gotta put that in Greg's water, we gotta put that in Vince's water. We gotta put that in
No.
Terry's water. They would look at it. Staff looks at it as a safety issue and what's best for the city overall.
But the infrastructure-
I'm sure.
You're right,
So
the
when
infrastructure.
you sit down with Scott Adams, you guys will be looking at the connections, the best connections, population base, safety, so on. And then from that consultation that you guys have at the staff level, a recommendation is brought back to council.
So quickly, Ramon, did we know that the Upton Road pathway was going in? I didn't know.
I didn't
It's
know.
not.
I didn't have a clue.
Did you know about it, Councillor Bird?
No? Who here knew?
Not
No,
till it started.
Yeah,
I know,
but that has to be shared with us. So that we can, as he said, Councillor Bird, there's interconnectivity
Yeah.
with Stratford, Cornwall, and all of Charlottetown. That, like, we're doing it by piecemeal. Your recommendation, which I agree, look at the big plan and let's start connecting the dots.
My point I was trying to make is, again, without all the information, so the Upton Road, okay, piece of the
Yeah.
active transportation tail they just put in, so the underground pathway joining Lewis Point area over, okay, was
Yeah.
never a priority, because we never had a connector on the other side.
That's
So-
right.
So it was never even on the wish list. All of a sudden, now the province and feds put in that road. Now my point is that we have to relook at the priorities now. This one now becomes a priority because something we didn't see happening is now in place.
I couldn't believe all the trees that were taken down.
I
And I
know.
never heard anybody saying it. And yet we were looking to take 3 trees down and simply drop, and there was a storm for about 2 weeks. I couldn't believe when I seen those trees being mowed down.
Well,
What's going on?
Mr. Chair, but Ramon is.
You get my point, is
Yeah.
that something
No,
then
no,
becomes a
yeah.
priority because
Yeah. So we have a regional committee, we have a bilateral committee with the province and the city, and I think, trilateral with the feds, and not to know that this was going out, until I was driving by and I said, what are they tearing down all the trees? What, are they widening the road? And then up came a active transportation pathway. Like, guys, I'm not putting the blame on us. I think we're doing our job. And we know it's been a priority to expand these pathways right from the beginning. But now we have to connect the dots.
Yeah, I think I couldn't answer for the problems, I don't know. But I mean, I think they paid 100%, it's in the industrial park.
Yeah.
Where it all sold.
Yeah.
and they own that stretch of road too. So
Yeah.
Oh, they do, and they own along the arterial highway, but we're communicating with them to tell them that we're putting in an active transportation pathway.
So, I mean, the MLA here property has requested it, wanted it, they agreed, they put it in.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing.
So just to summarize, this is not a word by word. Councilor Ferrer.
Yeah, no,
This is we saw the growth of East Royalty, and we continue to see the growth, but we've addressed it. Because that's where the priority needs to go, right? Between roads, sidewalks, active transportation trails, you're seeing that because that's where the growth is. So we're
Yeah,
addressing a need. My point is that it's not word, it's just follow the pieces, and you just gotta connect them.
yeah. And that's a good example you bring up, though, is St. Peter's Road, and you probably see the project they put in the active transportation too.
They did.
Did it communicate with, well, part of the project.
No, well, they communicated, because Angus Drive was a hot issue, and they threw it on our lap, and we had to make a decision. That being said,
No,
no, we got the
Hey, guys.
transportation pathway.
Decided a long time
Yeah,
before.
anyways, but the pathway's in, and we knew that
And
was
it was
going.
always planned to be in, all I'm saying is that was a project that would probably stay 100%.
Yeah.
It's put in part of the project. And, you know, obviously, we're pretty happy, the sidewalks and everything, and after transportation.
Yeah.
I'm happy anytime there's an active transportation pathway.
Well, I'll be happy when we get Towers Road done.
Well, there's more than that. but-
Yeah, I know there's more than that, but you know what? We talk about safety,
Yeah.
and it's a major safety issue. So that's why I brought up the issue here. You know, I mean, we're approving one project. Is there an opportunity to further other projects under this particular committee?
But to
And-
go back to what Councilor Rivera said.
Yeah.
What's the big plan?
I understand the big plan, but
That's
there's,
what I think you have to do.
I understand that. I understand that, but there's issues now that need to be dealt with, right?
But
There's
the
issues,
plan,
now.
the
Pardon
plan should
me?
show that, Councillor Tootle, right?
Pardon me?
That's the plan when we receive it.
Yeah.
Should validate that, and if the plan validates that,
Yeah.
then it's a much easier decision
Like,
for
I
council
mean-
as opposed to a councillor going by the war system lobbying for something in their area, at least.
But
this
that's
way.
council's job too, Councilor
I
Rivera.
get it, but it's nice, again, to have the
Yeah,
professionals and the
I-
engineers being able to say,
But
we represent the city of Charlottetown as a whole, that's all I'm saying.
that's right, but you gotta remember too, in public policy, there's the intended strategy, and then there's also the emerged strategy. Sometimes issues will arise or projects will arise that need to be dealt with
Yeah.
at that particular time because of safety and other issues and connectivity and all those things. I mean, we're talking about an underground pathway on Capitol Drive. Now, I've been lobbying for an underground pathway on University Avenue with all the traffic there. 6 lanes of traffic, 6 lanes. And it's a safety issue and it's a connectivity between Parks and Rec's already done some work and it would connect over to the university. Students from Charlottetown Rural and UPEI and citizens that want to, commute back and forth. So, when we're looking at underground pathways, I mean, there's one out there in East Royalty, that's working well. That's working very well.
There's a lot of foot traffic, there's always been a lot of foot traffic there.
Yeah, I know, there's also a lot of foot traffic in University Avenue, just as well.
Where you want to put a tunnel, I don't know where the foot traffic come from.
Pardon me? Well, do you know what? I know you don't, but there's,
We're off topic.
no, we're not off topic, we're talking underground pathways, we're talking Capitol Drive. So I think it's fair that we look at the underground pathway on University Avenue as well.
That's something the manager of environment and sustainability can bring up with her counterparts.
That's my point, it's all.
Provincial,
personal.
federally?
Yeah, well, I think we gotta look at these things,
Overview.
right? Collectively.
Big plan.
Yeah, big
What is the
plan.
big plan?
Big plan and necessity. I want to ask a question about these flashing lights. Ramona, maybe you can help me here. Mr. Kelly's now joined us. These flashing lights
Rapid
when,
flashing.
pardon me?
They're called rapid flashing.
Rapid flashing, right. So, does that come under active transportation funding?
Public Works, I already looked into it.
So it's not active transportation
It has to do
funding?
with traffic.
Pardon me?
It has to do with traffic.
Yeah?
And the public works.
So it's not, doesn't come
But
under
it
active
is an
transportation?
eligible expense under the PEI Active Transportation.
So it is.
So when we did the bypass highway, we included on Pioneer, when you're taking off from the highway onto Acadian Drive,
Yeah.
there's a rapid flashing, that's part of that project.
On the roundabout?
No.
No, on the bypass highway, just after the hospital, when you're going down to the French school, past the dog park, there's the
Okay.
Acadian Drive.
So you-
There's the flashing lights there, and we also did them on the
Longwood Avenue.
Longworth Avenue.
Okay,
trail crossing.
so funding came
From-
for Longworth Avenue?
Yes.
So did that fund pay for entirely the flashing lights or the rapid flashing
It
or
pays 50%.
50%?
50/50, yeah.
So 50/50. So can we advance projects through this committee?
Well, are you talking about Longworth Avenue?
Yes,
Well, this guy, Adam's not, managed that project.
he did, yeah. But it was an application that we made, the staff made collectively to the active
But it
transportation.
went through public works.
It did,
To get
yes,
it approved and to get it installed.
yes.
So it's still on the public works. The funding,
But can we not be involved with that here too? Because doesn't that apply under this committee as well?
I would say that's because you're hooked up to the Confederation Trail.
Pardon me?
Trail process there.
Yeah.
No.
It was identified as an active transportation priority because we had gotten a number of complaints about the safety of the trail crossing on Longworth Avenue.
Yes.
So we did an improvement at the intersection with PEIAT funding. Public Works did an improvement at the Longworth Avenue trail crossing, as well as Great George and Fitzroy crossing also was in that application. It was two places where there's a lot of pedestrians, a lot of cyclists here.
Yep.
Let's focus on improving safety.
And I think it's been a huge help. I really do. I would just like to, if it's possible to bring up other projects, I don't know, this committee. See, there's so much confusion with terms of reference and who's doing what and when they're doing it and who's lobbying and all this kind of stuff. I had a visit with.
It's all listed for each committee. Terms of reference are all listed. They're not that confusing.
Well, it is confusing, Terry, because we are putting money in for an active transportation pathway on the bypass. So that comes through this committee,
Yeah.
right?
The application does that.
Yeah, the application does. So that's why, see, you weren't here at the beginning. That's why I said, well, can we not advance other projects as well? And, Ramona said, well, what?
Mr. Chair, are you looking at this lighting going all along the Federation Trail?
Well, I mean,
Because I've been asked by some users
Yeah.
that Belvedere Avenue
Yeah.
is dangerous.
yeah,
Because the lights now, originally when we looked at it, the lights were what,
Yeah.
20 feet up?
yeah,
Now they have to be eye level. and
Yeah.
Pedestrians,
Yeah.
walkers find that flashing light is safer than those blinking
That's
lights.
correct.
They are.
That's-
That's why I had installed on Emin Crescent and Rich Avenue.
So let's make a
That's
recommendation.
the
Okay, so-
recommendation to Public Works. I'm sure they're gonna say,
Okay,
Make a
so,
recommendation to Public Works that
recommend-
all
okay,
houses-
I recommend,
You can.
Belvedere Avenue, Belvedere,
All along the
Rails trails.
Federation Trail.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend that, and the rapid flashing. I met with the executive director for the Boys and Girls Club. I had a meeting with him. Public Works has done some work to improve pedestrian safety and utilizing that crosswalk, but it gets dark at around 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Just after a moment, you can forward it to Public Works.
Okay, but I wanted,
I'll recommend it. Let's go.
so I wanted to bring this up because it's very, it's a safety hazard for students and parents trying to cross St. Peter's Road.
But let's,
Just in curiosity, I arrived here, 11:30 is tough for me to make, but anyway.
Yeah.
Is there somebody on the phone?
Tina.
Tina.
Oh, okay.
Hi,
I
Tina.
thought-
Hi, Tina.
I thought everybody was here.
Hey,
She's
all
listening.
right, Ronnie got
She's
that one
listening.
there.
Yep, I've got that.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else?
No, do you have anything else?
I got 10 more things,
Okay.
we'll bring them up later. Okay, Mona?
So I just wanted to go quickly through the transit budget then, so that's
The
the,
system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain in the conference, please press star 1. 15.
Press the button, Tina.
Mona, continue,
If I
please.
hold it, sorry to interrupt, am I here?
yes. You just need to push star 1. So we're all finished of our full-size transit buses by the end of this fiscal year, so none of that will be carried over. There is some money yet still in the budget, but that will be fully expensed by the end of the year. We did have a recommendation for leaning benches for 10 shelters. I will do my best to get that completed by year end as well, but if not, we would want to carry that over. And then the transit fleet renewal and electrification project. At this point, I just did a
The
carryover.
system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain in the conference, please press star 1. 14.
That's why I come to meetings.
Oh, I thought it was her.
Okay.
Okay. So I've just carried that over into next year's budget because we are working with our consultants right now, and I will have a better sense of what that budget will be shortly, but at this point, that's just a placeholder while we wait for that to be finalized. And that would include partner funding, but again, I haven't defined that as we still need to figure out specifically what we'll be looking to do in next year's budget.
Just a clarification. Ramona, how many electric buses?
So the intent is to purchase 12 electric buses over 6 fiscal years, but eventually to get to a full fleet of 20 electric buses.
This one says 3 on this, 3 full-size transit buses.
Yes, that was for our full-size diesel buses that we received in the spring of this year.
These electric buses are not the full size, right?
No, the electric buses will be the full size. So I just, like, as I mentioned, so we've got the 3 full-size transit buses. Those are already arrived, and all that money will be expensed within this fiscal year. So that won't be carried over. The transit fleet renewal and electrification, at this point, we're carrying over the full amount into next year's budget. As we are still waiting to refine what the budget will be. That's the 3.2 million, yes.
So, Ramona, as you suggested, you're going to do it in a phased-in approach.
Yes.
Which is, the way to go in terms of, what the financials are. So when will we see the first electric buses here in the city of Charlottetown?
We would hope to order them early next calendar year, and then they would arrive after that 18 months later. But
So 2022, the order will go in?
Yeah.
And then arrive in 23?
yes, late 2023. Now,
Okay.
that said, we need to build a facility before that time, so that timing might affect our timing on the bus's arrival.
So what's a contractor prepared to do in terms of building facility? Is the onus on the taxpayer?
So
To build
we
a
have
facility.
we have some funding earmarked, 23 million earmarked through the ISIP fund for our public transportation or transit project.
Right.
That will go towards the purchase of the buses as well as the facility development. At that point, this point, it would be our share of that is 17% of the total cost, because we get 67% from the, I'd have to go back and do it, but because we get a certain share and then we split it with Cornwall, Stratford, and ourselves. What's the municipal share?
Okay, so we're talking new facility, we're obviously talking a new location.
We're looking at locations currently, yes.
So does that mean with a new facility, new location, where they're at currently, they'll relocate out of there?
We haven't yet determined that, or we're working with the
That's
consultants
yet to
on
be
that.
determined also.
But we will bring forward, once we have our strategy that we'd like to recommend, we will be bringing that forward to this committee, and at that point, I can refine the budget numbers for you. It's just, we have a meeting today and on Friday, and a couple of those things need to get sorted before we can bring you a final plan.
Terry, you're next.
I'm just wondering, the Silverway charging stations, has that been determined where they're going?
We talked about putting them in the CADC parking lot as a sort of a tourism initiative by Peacekeep. Like, not a tourism initiative, but like a highly visible in the summer. It's not a novelty, but it's like a very innovative, we want them to be seen. But we haven't finalized any locations. We haven't heard back that we've gotten the funding, so we haven't even determined if we're proceeding yet.
Okay. Have we thought about maybe partnering with some of our, if you look at some of the big parking lots throughout the city, for example, we have Sobeys at University Avenue and Allen Street. We have Superstore, which is just up the street as well. And even the bigger, the Charlottetown Mall area. I mean, if you looked at Sobeys and Allen closer to University Avenue, that might be an option for the folks that are living, in that general area to go and charge their vehicles, and it's easy for them. I think it's easy for them to commute.
Yeah, the province of PEI either has already or is soon to announce an EV charging incentive for commercial entities. So they'll be working with the Sobeys and Superstores and Walmarts.
Okay, good.
To make sure that in all those parking lots, you're seeing charging infrastructure. But
Okay.
the province is taking the lead on that. They do have funding federally for that program. So we haven't really went to join.
There's a bunch of chargers out at the, out where Cows and Receiver and a bunch of the,
That's Tesla.
sorry?
Tesla.
Tesla, so it's not for all vehicles.
I don't know, do they have adapters? I was
You
going to ask them on.
can use an adapter.
Yeah,
Do they have adapters?
There's about 8 of them out there. They're all lined up. And people are using them,
Yeah, that's great.
so. Okay,
And
thank you, Ramon.
Mr. Chair, you know that they have them at Parks Canada or Gallon?
Yes, I
They
do.
have them all over the
Yeah.
city. Tesla
Yeah.
is doing a great job.
Yeah,
Are they level 2?
So they're superchargers, so they're DC fast.
There's level 3?
Yes, not cool.
Can I just ask a question really quick?
Sure,
Because
go ahead, Julie.
I know the charging rates are on the agenda. So I was just whispering over to him there. All the community centers in Charlottetown received a charging station, but which ones?
So we had discussed that at a previous
Uh-huh.
meeting, and we had determined that we weren't going to put any at East Royalty Community Center or at Hillsborough Community Center.
But
And,
there's one there at Hillsborough.
but there was one extra that got added when Maritime Electric installed their own on Kent Street, that put one back into the pot. So we did put one at the Hillsborough Community Center at that point.
But Maritime Electric's flow, that's an EV out there. It's a different one, isn't it? Because I looked at it.
It just means that we had reserved that spot over on Kent for one of ours,
Oh.
but because they did their own, we
Okay.
didn't need to use one of
Gotcha.
ours for them.
That's the reason we have.
So
the
why would there be 2 at West Royalty and none in East Royalty? And we just happened to get spare, so we threw it in there. Why would there
At
be?
least you would.
We focused on Cody, like, we focused on those areas that we thought were going to be higher demand for it, so we did think West Royalty Community Center would have a higher demand for those chargers.
So why would we think West Royalty would have higher demand than East Royalty?
We sat down with Public Works and Parks and Rec, and we looked at all the options that were on the list, and then we created a prioritized list together of what we thought would be the most demand, that would be most suitable for the types of uses that we would have there. So for instance, if you're dropping off the kids at hockey, we thought you're sitting in the parking lot for 2 hours, that's a good length of time for a charge. West Royalty Community Center has quite a lot of programming happening in there as well. I know with East Royalty, when we had mentioned it before, Julie, you or Councilor McCabe, we had mentioned that you thought that perhaps wouldn't be a good location for it, because you do have daycare during the day, and I don't remember all the details of the program,
Yeah.
but I do remember that was kind of listed as a.
I think
you can
when we
bump
were
this one
looking
off the
initially,
list.
I guess if we were looking at places like a superstore or places where we were gonna try to promote electric use, but I guess if we're gonna look at community centers being our spots, then
Okay.
The community centers were initially higher up on the list, and that got moved down to.
So do you have any way, Monica, do you have any way, I'm sure, I mean, it's out there, that we can see stations that are being used and not being used, real comparable?
Yes, so we would have an online system which would show us statistics of when someone plugged in, when someone removed. We would be able to track all that.
This must be music to your ears. Here we are arguing over EV charges. Just love to hear it. This is a great step forward.
No, but
It's great.
You know, well, it is, but I mean, the optics aren't good. We designed West Road, you get 2.
Yeah,
But you know what? Hillsborough Park, you don't get none, because, you know, there's not people using it there.
yeah.
That's
where-
more optics.
No, the
Two,
Hillsborough Park Hall has.
installing
Yeah,
two at
that
one
would happen,
location
that
is
would happen,
preferred.
yeah.
And I
I
can
would
tell you
think
why, that it's
that
preferred to have 2. So 2, when we install 2 with the NRCan funding, we get funding for install on each of the chargers, but it's only the cost of 1 install. So 2 is our preferred method, because then we get more funding towards the install. You get instant funding for both the units and both the installs, even though the install cost is only for 1. So we didn't want to put 1 in any of the locations, but we did have 1 left over. So we had to make a call on where that went, and this was the call that we made.
And we do hope they can, you know, obviously we hope they are. So that data, is that per month that you can pull that down?
Yes.
Okay. And the installation, if it's all was completed at the end of August?
So you would see in the report, there are a few which are left, and a few which are installed already.
I don't see it in my report.
So there are,
So it's installed. Fitzroy Parking.
Oh, the ones that are installed. Yeah,
To be
what did you say
installed.
they're what?
so for example, the first on the list is City Hall. City Hall is being installed right now in New Swap there.
To be installed, yeah.
And so it says to be installed. New public library is already installed. The CABC Peaks Key parking lot has been installed. The Great George, that's Victoria Road, Great George has already been installed. Cody Banks has been installed. Fitzroy Parkade and the Pownell Parkade are to be installed. The 2 chargers at Simmons Arena have been installed. West Royalty Community Center, 2 chargers have been installed, and at Hillsborough, 1 has been installed.
So just to be a nitpicker, it doesn't matter, I just wonder why the higher use would be installed first, like the parkades?
Why haven't they?
Yeah, why would you do that first?
So those are a little complicated situations where metering and connection from Maritime Electric took a while to figure out, and there's a third
The other
party
ones were easier to
involved.
install.
What is that?
The other ones were easier to install.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there was a third party involved, so we had to communicate and figure out everything with them as well.
Mr. Chair, just to go back to the capital budget, just want to go back to the electric buses, delivery 2023. We're looking at up to 12, have to develop a bus facility. I know that back in the 2019 election, Winnipeg made a huge announcement, built this huge facility because of cold weather, no different than us. Do you have a projected cost for that facility? Do we know?
I don't.
Okay.
But I
What
will bring
about
that forward.
the charger? Like I think the last time I heard for these superchargers for buses, we're looking at 800,000 to $1 million. Are we looking at 1 charger for the facility? Do we have to look at 2 for this new facility? Do we have an idea?
Yeah, so we're working on our strategy right now. We have a meeting this afternoon
Okay.
with the consultants. They're gonna go through all the results from the request for information that went out last week and closed by the city last week. So that'll have all the details in terms of how we're going to proceed, the pricing, but this was the deadline for the capital budget, so I'm bringing forward what I have at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just one question for a moment, just wondering the curiosity, the placemaking project for teens, what is that about?
Okay, so this was a project put forward by one of our staff. I'll bring up you'll have to give me a minute to bring up
That's 11,000, correct?
yeah. Okay, a public site in West Royalty and Sherwood will be chosen to create a space to encourage teens to spend time outdoors. We've noted that teens are not using public spaces at the same rate as our other age segments. We also noted that it's a specific type of teen that uses certain spaces, whereas like there's not a lot of spaces for girls in some sites, there's not a lot of spaces for people who are not like playing hockey or certain types of sports. So we're trying to work with Parks and Rec on a few different types of designs of projects. So designs will have a nature cafe theme and use seating made from recycled materials, salvage, log side tables, and solar energy USB charging stations. The solar USB charging stations will be designed through a partnership with UPEI should our request for collaboration be successful. So the capital request is $10,000. And ideally, some of these funds will be covered by a grant request, but we haven't applied for anything yet. So we wanted to put that in there as seed money to try out some of this different type of public space.
And so the end result we're hoping to get from it, Ramona, would be?
Would to attract more kids and teens into our public spaces, to be out in nature, to be away from their televisions and their video games, and to create more safety or inclusiveness in those public spaces, so different types of teens want to use public spaces. We've been doing some research in terms of what spaces attract what types of kids, and that there's a big segment of the population that don't necessarily feel comfortable in the public spaces that we're providing. So we wanted to test out some of these different design theories and how do we attract and bring teens into these spaces.
Julie?
Could this collaborate a little bit with our public art person too, that we've hired out for, looking at maybe, different spaces in different areas for different age levels, but maybe having some input from the cross-section into the public art piece too, that might
Yeah, that's a great idea.
really fancy this up a little bit,
Yeah.
draw some kids.
Mr. Chair, at Canal Square, that tree and turf, was that a collaboration between Parks and Recreation and Sustainability, or was it just a Parks initiative?
That was a Parks initiative. And then we had to go in and add some real playground equipment.
Right. So you got a tree and
I
then
have to go and see.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Busy day.
You have a nice day as well. Okay, thank you, Ramona. Okay, that was the budget, capital budget, and that can still be revised at a later date if we have to.
Do we need a motion on that? There will be some revisions made to it.
Second.
It will be referred to the finance board.
Okay, great, thank you. B, Climate Change Fund for food. Katrina.
Thank you. So this report is to update you on some funding that the city received, working towards some of our goals around food waste reduction and supporting food exchange programs.
Okay.
So I know I brought some statistics to you all a few months ago about food waste and how around 58% of the food produced in Canada goes to waste, and how at the same time a lot of people in our community are experiencing food insecurity. So we partnered up with Farm and Food Care from the PEI Federation of Agriculture and applied for funding through the Climate Challenge Fund. So that's the province's fund. And we're successful in receiving $47,700 towards the project. So they are technically the lead on the project because we were able to get a better rate of funding. That way they were able to get 90% coverage. So the project involves three components. The first is a study to assess the current scope of the food waste problem in Charlottetown. The second is a dedicated marketing and education campaign behind an app. So basically the app is like a connector. It will connect organizations that have extra food, so for example producers and retailers and wholesalers, with those who need food, so charitable organizations. So there's a number of these apps already in use and they've had a lot of success. But it's been shown that they need a bit of a boost. So education for the donors and the donees to help them adapt to using it, as well as just general education on why it's important and the food waste issue itself. And then the third component is a small scale infrastructure fund. So we included $15,000 in funds that are reserved if charitable organizations need support in accepting and impulsive donations, so whether it be fridges or freezers, food preservation equipment. I believe you're all familiar with the community fridge project, so maybe something like that where they want to put a community fridge outside their own organization, any of those types of things. So the project is modeled after a similar initiative that was carried out in BC, and it was successful in diverting over 600,000 meals in the course of a year, so which vastly exceeded their expectations. It was a very successful project. We have begun early stages of the project, so we did assess the available food rescue apps in Canada. They're all free to use, but we found that one already has begun to build a footing in PEI. So it's called the Second Harvest Food Rescue app. So they have been working away, and they're based in the GTA, but they have a representative in the Maritimes out of New Brunswick. So we felt as though because they already have momentum, they would make the most sense to go with. So we have partnered up with them to use their app for this project. But in addition, Second Harvest also has a lot of expertise in the area around food studies, as well as ready-to-go educational resources to help people with the process. So because of that, they've also been contracted by Farm and Food Care and PEI Federation of Agriculture to carry out that study, as well as the marketing and education campaign. So the hope is that the food waste study will be completed in this year, and the marketing efforts will begin early next year. And as I mentioned, we received $47,700 in funding. The total project was $53,000, and that includes a cash contribution from the city of $2,300, and then $1,000 in in-kind staff time, and that's already budgeted for in the 2021-2022 operating budget for sustainability.
Thank you, Katrina. Any questions for Katrina?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just want to say, Katrina, you're always doing a great job. I'm just wondering, Katrina, Farm and Food Care, is that based out of the farm center?
They were.
Is that Phil Farrell?
I had no.
It's not.
It's Mariah Smith and Santina Beaton.
Okay.
And they work under PEI Federation of Agriculture under that umbrella, and they were out of the farm center until very recently. But they did tell me that they moved, and I'm not sure exactly where.
What's amazing is that now when you listen to the rising cost of food, the argument now coming up from the policy wonks is that because food's going up, they're reducing the contents of your Cheerio boxes and so forth, and they're seeing a reduction in food. Well, is that a good reason now to reduce your food by the increase in cost? So this is a big help by channeling these resources. And out in BC, Richmond, BC, it's already time tested, right? And it's been successful with 600,000.
600,000 meals.
Great idea.
It's hard to fathom. It says the current estimate states 58% of food produced
Yeah.
in Canada goes to waste.
It's all along the food chain, so the food supply chain. So that includes like any food that's getting left in farmers' fields, any that's going rotting along the production chain, in the grocery stores. Like if you think of the food that's going bad or not being sold at all because you made it ugly or unfit,
Yeah.
and then the amount that's going to waste in people's fridges too. So it sounds like a big number, but
Wow. I'll have to give you credit. More often than not, community, they've gotten money from somewhere else.
Oh,
You guys are good with money.
Well, that's,
you can find food anywhere.
I know a lot of times community, but this is for the same time here, because, and they're around the edges, it's going to be successful.
Great work. Great work.
And my wife, Lori, was down at the community fridge twice. No
If you
food,
won't feed them,
but no food, and we're making a dedication each week to drop something off. It's amazing that you don't see the food smashed up all around the building. It's people are actually taking it.
that's the same one we gave the 2,000.
2,000.
it is.
And you had food already.
It's they continually sort of update or like fill it. So it gets filled and then it gets emptied quite quickly and then they're
Yeah, it gets emptied real quick.
It's based on donations.
Yeah.
And as Sheena said to me,
Well, I thought when we, okay.
as Sheena said that she spoke to a mother who went to the community food fridge, or community fridge, and she said, now I can give my children fresh vegetables and fruit. Couldn't do that before because of the cost at the
Yeah.
grocery store.
Oh,
It's
it's
drastic. It is.
And that was supposed to kill me for like 3 months.
2 months,
2.
2,
Okay, then we upped this to
2,000.
Yeah.
But as Councillor Tweedle said, who
So-
represents the area, the food's not there and it's gone. That's the
Well, there's some other issues there. I've got to look at, contact by one of the
I'm sure
neighbors.
it's funds.
I wouldn't think at the moment, but also I will say that just based on our financial
Yeah.
processes, they probably only recently received the money.
So we
like
need-
physically received the money,
Yeah.
but I do think it's more of an issue of that like volunteers almost can't keep it
Yeah.
stocked. And I also think that at this time of year, although we have provided funding and that will keep them going, they'll also, one challenge I anticipate that they'll be experiencing is that their fresh food donations from farmers will be reduced because of the growing season.
And people will use it a lot more, try to save money for Christmas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there'll be some different, they estimated that that's how long it would keep them going for, and I'm sure they haven't worked through it already. But this is all, they're also varying with this and going into the season will be a bit of a different
And you continue to keep updates with them, right? Like if there's an issue there, you bring it back.
Yeah, I do, and I will. And I will also note they are signed up on Second Harvest and have been receiving donations that way. But one thing I'm hoping that this project will help with is they're saying like it's gone off Second Harvest like that too. So the amount of people looking for food on Second Harvest are exceeding what's being donated on there. So hopefully if we can target some efforts to the donation side and some of those organizations that have that surplus food, then we'll be able to boost that side and they won't have that challenge.
So,
Go ahead, you go ahead.
I'm just curious, especially if it's 58%. So, in Iowa, I'm assuming that's with Iowa fields too, whether it's turnips or potatoes or what have you. Is there any kind of a program being talked about to get more of the food out of those fields?
Not currently, although I will say with Second Harvest, they have their app and that's their primary mode of these transactions happening. But they do have dedicated staff that, for example, a potato farmer, maybe they have run out of time and capacity to harvest and they want they don't want the potatoes to go to waste, but they also can't get them out of the field, they can call Second Harvest and they will see if they can coordinate people to go and
Right,
harvest the
okay.
potatoes. So there's also room for communications there. And I also know that Food Exchange, PEI, works to do a lot of gleaning. So they organize days where people can go pick apples or potatoes or carrots that are going to be left in the field. And then they usually, I believe, some are left for the farmer or donated, and then some are taken by the people volunteering. So there is work on that front.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, there may be some issues with the community fridge and all the facilities that provide food, whether it's food bank or soup kitchen. But again, it just illustrates the problem. The gulf between the haves and have-nots is getting wider every day.
Oh, I understand that.
And
I
let me just
understand
finish, and those families that depend
Yeah.
on these resources,
Yeah.
maybe they take a little more than they have to, but you know what? It's a sad situation we're in, it's getting worse.
Yeah, it is getting worse, but no, there's other issues, and I'll discuss them with Ramona and the CAO. I'm not gonna get into it right
Thank you.
here, right now, but no, Katrina, once again, the norm in this department is excellent work. So put a big star beside your name, you're doing terrific work. Peter, time for a raise. Okay, next, I mean that sincerely.
Vermont doing your hip raise too?
Well, he got it last month. Okay. Right, Amon? Okay, C, speaking of Amon, you're on.
I guess I'll try to take the star again.
And the cash.
And the raise.
And a trip.
So as mentioned earlier, 19 chargers were installed or are being installed within City of Charlottetown. They have been strategically placed in high-density areas, arenas, and then community centers.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned the list of them. They're there in your report. There's work being done in front of City Hall right now, so you can see that conduit being put in. So there was a committee formed to discuss the fees part of these chargers, because the electricity being consumed by these chargers is going to cost the city something. So it had members from the police department, for enforcement, finance department, and sustainability department. The members went through all the optics of this charging infrastructure, how it's going to be policed, how we are going to charge the individuals using it. There were a lot of options we could have selected from. So option 1 is what we're bringing forward to the committee today.
Yep.
And option 2 is an alternative if the committee wants us to explore. So what the option 1 is, it's for metered parking space where an hourly rate is charged for areas where there is a parking meter already existing. For example, City Hall, Queen Street Queen Street charging, which is in front of the new public building.
I think we would recommend like $4 an hour.
Yes, and the breakdown of that is in here, where if we charge $4 an hour, we will receive $3.20 an hour after taxes being removed and a 10% charge by the company which provided us the charger.
What's our parking now, $2 now? Per hour?
It's still $1.75. It is supposed to go up, as you know, but it hasn't gone up yet.
Sorry.
That's fine. So that was also discussed in a lot of meetings where the price change is hard to implement later on in the future if things don't work out. So $1.30 of the amount is allocated to the parking meter cost. So that is how much we get back from whatever the cost is, $175 or $150 an hour. And that's how much the city gets. So if we reduce that amount, there is a total of $1.90 per hour which is left for the city, and the approximate cost the city would have for electricity is going to be $1.52 per hour. That would just leave us with 38 cents at the end of the day if we charge $4 an hour. This is for parking spaces where there's a meter installed
So
and
they
we
get
have.
parking and a charge.
Exactly.
Right.
To cover our parking cost and the charge cost.
Okay.
So 38 cents is gonna be that. And for places where there is no meter or there is parkade separate fees, we recommend that we charge an hourly rate of $3 because to make it as fair as possible. Similar math went on this, and in this 88 cents would be left with the city at the end of the day.
Thank you, Iman. Go ahead, Doug.
Have we done a comparison to what other municipalities are charging?
Yes, so other municipalities within Charlottetown, within PEI or outside?
The Maritime province.
I'll start with PEI and then go around. So Stratford is kind of looking at similar rates to us. There is a community of West, I forget what community it is, or I do not want to mention their name for privacy purposes. They're just gonna charge a flat $2, but they do not have meter fees to consider. Other municipalities within the Maritimes usually have $2 for charging cost. And if there's a meter involved, then the price gets tricky, like our first situation. In bigger municipalities where there's a denser downtown area, they use what we have in option 2, where the parking meter cost increases per hour as long as you park. So those are what other municipalities charge. And one thing I forgot to mention, a full charge on these charger could take 7 to 8 hours, which probably would put the user at $28 approximately for a full charge. And if you go to the Canadian Tire fast charger, that's $20 an hour. So at the yes. So at the end of the day, it's going to be pretty close. Plus, you're getting this premium parking spot at a downtown location.
So these comparisons are all number 2 charges.
No, the option 1. And for what is in the option 2 is that $2 for the first hour, $3 for the second hour, so on, it keeps increasing.
They're level
No,
2
but a
charges.
level 2
They're
charge.
level 2, that's what he's
Yes,
saying.
yes, so
That's,
sorry.
yeah, level 2
And
charges.
Stratford is doing $3 per hour.
For level 2?
Yeah, for a
That
level
makes
2.
sense, the first option.
And Ahmad, when I was in Summerside, and councillors, you have to get out and drive these 2 cars, one, the Kona or the
Bolt.
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 I took it up to Summerside, beauty, and I had to get it charged. So it was $1.75 per hour. But then Greg McCabe, Goody, he said, no, go down to the other parking lot, it's free. So of course, being parsimonious with my money, I went down to the free parking lot.
With your money.
And
Yeah.
2 hours later, good charge, it's great.
So who's out from the free charge?
Summerside, they have the parking lot that is closest to the football field, the turf field.
Oh, yeah.
They got,
So then who's charging you $1.25?
when you park in is it the Cup? The Cup parking lot, the credit union, when you get a prime parking space, it's $1.75 an hour.
It's
And I
their
think-
own electricity though, right?
And I
They're-
think, yeah, they get their own electric company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're selling Maritime Electric utilities, so we have to consider
We have
those
to pay.
rates.
We're a subsidiary.
customer.
Subsidiary.
I just wondered why one area is Sunnyside is free and another area is charged.
So,
All in the same.
Yeah, oh, it's all in the same umbrella, yeah.
Unless it's
Amon,
called a price, right? Parking spot, that's actually what you pay for.
That's Cup, you get a prime parking space, whereas the free, you have to go down to the other parking lot that's closest to the turf field. And it's only a little walk, it's a short walk, but it works.
Yeah.
Great speed too.
Ramon, I want to thank you for your report. I noticed that,
Mr. Chair, can I just ask one more question?
yeah, sure.
Just, I'm just wondering, for those that charge at home, do we know what the charge would be for electricity?
So based on the math which was provided to us, costing which was provided to us by Maritime Electric. A lot of our math is based on that.
Yeah.
And the charge per hour which we would get is in here, sorry, is going to be approximately $1.52
Per hour.
per hour.
So I was home and I plugged into my own in my garage, that's, I'm roughly the electricity costs about 50 hours.
Yes, or lower. There are some situations where we would go in demand charge and that raises the price, but like at home, the tax. Yes.
And Councilor Bernard, that's a level 1, because we have one out here, right? That's a level 1 charger, the Kona, that you plug into the wall.
So at home, when there's a fixed, when someone usually owns a electric vehicle, they install a level 2 charger as well. We're having a level 2 charger installed for our vehicles as well.
But currently we're using the.
We're using level 1.
Well, that's for price
And-
range for the level 2.
What's that?
A price range is for a level 2.
For
$152 an hour.
for a homeowner to purchase, the province is giving it out for free right now with the $5,000 rebate.
But the rate you're talking about is as what the homeowner would pay in electricity for a level 2 at home, not level 1.
It's gonna be around the $1.52
But level 1 or level 2?
for level 2.
Thank you.
Okay, done there? Okay. If I look at the first 4, it's in the downtown area, then we're at Cody Banks, Fitzroy Parkade, okay, downtown, Palm, downtown, Simmons, out in the Brighton area, West Riley, Hillsborough community. You've got nothing in the heart of the city. For example, north of Houston, going up University Avenue, there's no opportunities there, no options being listed. Can we not improvise and add a couple?
We don't really own any land in that area.
Well, can we not partner? Can we not partner? I mean,
I think that's what we're gonna see though with the provincial program. Is
Okay.
that we're going to see like the Sobeys on Allen. And
Sobeys.
we're gonna see those types of partners come to the
Sobeys,
table. Because we were really challenged in terms of finding locations that we actually owned that were feasible to actually run the line. Like it was very hard to come up with 19 or this many locations.
there's
so-
Sobeys, there's a farm center, there's experimental farm.
Yeah. All of those will be eligible under the new program.
And I think the province is planning on rolling out quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I,
They're good incentives and they'll help you with the installs, like there's lots of
Okay.
support there for the commercial sector.
No,
But
I
we
just-
wanted to focus on making sure that city facilities where we could and city right of where we
Just
could.
in curiosity, Mom, who would have paid to put the Tesla ones in?
Tesla.
I think that's Tesla.
That is, no,
Yeah.
it's Tesla.
Like, I
Yeah,
think
they
they
made
find
the
a
announcement.
partner and then they say, we get all the revenue from these, but can we put them in your parking lot?
72%.
There are many more opportunities for that for sure.
I'm sure they're, like, I know at Canadian Tire, they've done the same thing.
But that facility's in Charlottetown. For Tesla, out of San Antonio, Texas, that's Charlottetown. Yeah.
But I wonder if there's more opportunity throughout the city to do more of that. They're paying for the infrastructure, right?
I'm sure the high visibility of the ones on the, whatever, that
North
White
of-
House
yeah.
are going to lead to more people reaching out for that type of service for their customers, for sure.
okay.
72% of electric cars in the road today are Tesla.
But I mean, that's a level 3 charger. That's like a 15-minute charger.
Oh, yeah, just-
That's one of the downfalls.
Don't put your finger in the ball plug.
Right. So, Ramona, once again, the locations I mentioned, North Houston, they're going to, I don't know, explore it, activate it, opportunity to see some of those services provided for the residents that live in this community.
And like Hamad said, there is an incentive program right now through the province, so anybody that's buying electric vehicle
Yeah.
is getting that option, having one at home. Like, we're just kind of trying to serve those people who are out and about
They give you
more
one
than.
with it in the electric vehicle.
What's
They give
that?
you-
Yeah,
they give you a charger.
exactly, yes. So
Okay.
we're just
The way-
looking for
it's the way of the
a
future, Mr.
approval
Chair.
on
Pardon
going
me?
with option
Electric is
one
the
on
way of the
pricing.
future.
Well, it's renewable, sustainable energy. It's what this committee's all about, Mr. Brown. Too bad you couldn't use that with the crane service. Nonetheless,
Mr. Chairman, in
Take it off? Well, we're gonna move for adjournment. Move for adjournment? Second, motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Great work.
Was there a reason?
Option one was
Yeah, I think
approved
you're going
then?
for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we're.
Yeah.
And
No,
we'll add that to the schedule.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Option one, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Emergency alert.
Okay, 12:55.
Thank you.